In this video, I'm going to take this very large pipe wrench and add a couple other pieces of steel to it to make two very large knives that are just kind of right out of the fantasy world of apocalyptic situation. If you have a zombie on your doorstep, maybe these are the knives for you. So I have to start off by cutting this thing apart with an angle grinder. You see how those sparks come off and then explode at the ends? That indicates that it is good high carbon steel, and that's what I was looking for when I was doing this. It is very important that this is good high carbon steel because the steel that I'm cutting around right now will then become the center portion of this layered construction that I'm doing. And that center portion will then become the edge, so that needs to be good high carbon steel or it won't hold a good edge. Luckily for us, it's good high carbon steel. While I'm using my press to forge this thing out, I want to tell you about what was going on in my life during this whole situation, because sometimes the mindset of a build is also just as big as what you're building itself. And I've got to tell you what, I was not in a very good mindset, and I'm really glad that this build came along because it really helped me work through some things mentally. So, leading up to this build, my grandma was in hospice. My grandma Cone, which is my dad's mother, she is a big staple in my life. Luckily, I grew up in a very small community, and my grandparents were within just a couple miles of my house. So I spent a lot of time at my grandparents', including at Grandma Mimi's. We called her Mimi. And I have a lot of really fond memories of her, of course, just like everyone has fond memories of their grandparents. I found out that my grandma was moved into hospice, spent a few days with friends and family to, be around when she's going through this awful situation. And she passed away. Of course, my mind was not thinking about the Apocalypse Challenge, which this build was for. Go ahead and go check out the full Apocalypse Challenge build. It's a much quicker, snappier version of this video. This was going on, and then the Apocalypse Challenge, I basically had 3 days to build this between when my grandma passed away and when the visitation and funeral. Because by the time I got back from the visitation and funeral, the video needed to be published. And it was a very tight window. And this allowed me to spend time building this, which is a lot of fun for me. And I was working with my hands and thinking about my grandma through this whole entire thing, which was very beautiful. It was very therapeutic for me. It really helped me contextualize what was going on. Throughout this build, I really thought about the service that my grandma did for others, because that seemed to be kind of the core of who she was. And it made me recenter to think about the service I give to others and what I can do to go above and beyond for not only my customers, but also friends and family. And that is a lesson that I feel like my grandma would be proud of me for taking. I had said earlier that I was doing a layered construction with this build, and this material right here is wagon wheel. Now, this wagon wheel is made of a nice wrought iron, which was sent to me by my good buddy, Timber Tiger Forge. Please go check him out. He is a phenomenal maker as well as a material supplier. He was able to send me this for a very, very great price, and I know if you go check him out, he would give you a great price as well. The nice thing about wrought iron from a wagon wheel is that the grain structure is going already in the direction that you want, and that you don't really have to thin it out too much because it's already pretty thin. Now that it's nice and flat, I can start preparing all of the materials to be ready for a forge weld. Things have to be super, super clean to forge weld, because if there's any scale or oxidation between the materials that you're trying to forge weld, it's just not going to stick and you're going to have delaminations. I've learned with these wrench builds that you have to be very careful when grinding it on a 2x72 to make sure to not only get things perfectly flat, get rid of all of that forge scale which would cause those delaminations, but be really cautious once you get up to like that little shelf area that I'm getting to right there, that needs to be as close to a 90-degree angle, because once you add that material to the sides and start to draw it out, you're going to thin that material up, which is going to then make it a little bit weaker because it is so thin. And you know we can't have a weak blade because this is an apocalypse chopper. You're going to need to chop some stuff up with this thing. So we want nice, strong welds that are going to hold for a long time. We got the body nice and flat and clean. So now let's switch over to the jaw. I could tell as I was grinding on the jaw steel that it seemed to be an even higher carbon content than the body of the wrench itself. You can really see as those sparks are coming off of that material that they're sparking more, and the explosion of the ends of those sparks make me confident that it is going to be a good high carbon steel. I also had a cheat because on the side of it itself, it had oil quenching steel. That feels like a good sign. I really hope that you are enjoying my content, and I want your opinion on something real quick. I have been experimenting with releasing not only the fast, snappy, highly edited videos, but also these longer, more quote-unquote director's cut. Whether they're completely shop sounds or with me doing voiceovers about what's going on, I want your opinion if you prefer the more real-time, longer videos, or if you prefer the short, snappy, more entertaining videos. I feel like I can teach a lot more and talk a lot more about what's going on, and hopefully that helps more people in these longer videos. But I also understand that your time is a precious thing, and I don't want to waste that. So maybe you prefer the shorter videos. Or maybe I should just keep doing both. That seems to be a pretty decent situation, but I want to know from you guys what you think in the comments down below. Now this material is nice and clean, so let's switch over to this bandsaw blade. This is also a high carbon steel, and it was sent to me by my buddy Timber Tiger Forge. Same guy that sent me that wrought iron wagon wheel. Again, go check out Timber Tiger Forge. Like I said before, he's a great guy, and he really appreciates the support of his followers and his customers, and every time I've ordered from that guy, he always sends more than what I ordered just because that's who he is, and everyone that I've talked to says the same thing about him. Chris Magnus, great dude over in Oregon. Do me a favor and follow him. His link for his Instagram is in the link down in the description. Now here, I make kind of an odd decision, and I was really hoping to keep these bandsaw blade teeth on it itself, because I feel like that really adds to the aesthetic of the Apocalypse Challenge. If it has these gnarly looking teeth on the back, I thought that that would be something cool that you could imagine smashing into an enemy or a zombie or whatever else. But turns out that it didn't work out. You'll see later in this video. Another thing is I am not a very experienced welder, and I'm sure anybody who sees my welding would understand that I can about stick things together, and that's about it. If you have welding advice, I would love to hear it, whether you let me know in the comments down below or reach out to me personally over on Instagram or Facebook or even an email. All of those links are in the description down below. That's also where you're going to be able to check out my website where you can see available knives. If you want a custom knife, my book is always open, so please go ahead and reach out to me. I can make just about anything that you can imagine if it's a fixed blade, so please go ahead and reach out. We can make something really cool happen. This is what it looks like. I personally think that this is a super badass look. I really wish I could keep those teeth because I think that would have looked really cool. In the future, I hope to someday do more intricate designs with Damascus. I would love to do mosaics and really fun designs, but I don't think that this press is going to be the one that is going to do it for me. Don't get me wrong, this thing has been an absolute really great first step into the Damascus making world, but there are some things that just are not suitable for high layer and more intricate Damascus. This thing was a $500 fine, and it's something that I was able to cobble together and suit into my needs. But as you can see, nothing really lines up well. The pressure isn't in the middle of the plates itself, so it just bows and pushes and swishes in wrong directions. And I find that as it clamps down, and maybe you can see it, it kind of turns things a little bit, and it also pulls things in the wrong directions. So I can do low layer Damascus, and I can do sand mize and go mize and all of that, and not have much issues. But if I go any further, the Damascus itself twists, like one edge will creep up on the other edge, and it just kind of makes it so that if I were to stack past that, it just doesn't look right. I will definitely have to keep working and make this work for now. It's a great sand mine machine, but it's not a long-term fix. You can also see like this whole thing bend in ways that it shouldn't. Maybe it's a little scary. Here's what I was talking about earlier, where these teeth have to go. It's just, they're squishing out in wrong directions. They've pulled apart. They're really thin at the base, and you can really see that. You know, I was able to rip these things off super quick on the bandsaw, and if I were to stretch this thing out any further, they probably would have bent and fell off on their own. I don't really want to deal with that, and also, I'm getting kind of an odd bend to the back, so here is where I'm fixing that bend. This is definitely going to make a better knife. It's well over an inch thick at this point, so there is still a long ways I still have to go thinning this thing out. Switching over to working on the jaw portion of this build, it's kind of bizarre because this piece of material seemed to stretch out even easier, and it stretched out further than the handle portion. I don't know if they're different types of steel or if one just, for some reason, just worked easier. It's a little counterintuitive because you would imagine that the larger piece of steel would hold more heat and stretch easier. And it's the same materials. It's the same wrought iron wagon wheel on the sides as well as the bandsaw blade as the shim. So you would think that it's the same material. It should stretch the same, right? I don't know. It's bizarre, but it worked out a lot better, and I really like the way that it felt in this press. Just look at the concentration on my face here. You almost can't tell that I've been in a hospice for like 5 days at this point. Maybe this concentration is directly a result of just being so happy to be here working on a thing that I love and getting my mind off of the situation while also thinking about my grandma. It is great to be a knife maker. After working on this steel so much, I have to do a quick annealing cycle so that I don't get cracks or warps or any issues like that. Grabbing the larger chopper, I'm finally able to work on the final profile of these blades. It was really easy to choose the final profile because I wanted to leave as much material to these as possible because I wanted them to be super heavy and choppy. I did decide to cut off this end on that angle so that if you had to do some sort of a stabbing motion, you know, you can't really stab with a square chopper, so you might as well put a point on it. It also kind of makes it look sinister to me. Seeing how this thing is a ½ inch thick at this point, I feel like the hollow grind is the only logical choice for the type of bevel I was going to grind into this thing. The hollow grind is allowing me to really reduce a lot of weight quickly on this thing, as well as reduce that overall edge geometry to the point where it is going to actually be slicey in the end. If I were to do full flats, we would be looking at more of like a maul, like those wood chopping mauls that you see, and that's not really what I'm looking for in this type of blade. I feel like this shot is the perfect example for how slow I was putting in these bevels. Now, these are all pre-heat treat, so your bevels need to be super flat and super level. If you don't put in super level bevels before heat treat, you're going to have more material on one side than the other. Now, these things are forged, so you're expecting a little bit of warpage overall, but a nice level bevel is going to help you in a big way. The big one is done, so let's work on the jaw. It's all the same stuff on this one as the other one, so I'm going to actually shut up for a little bit and let you enjoy the shop sounds. It's time to heat treat these blades, so I go ahead and put them into my Even Heat. I absolutely love my Even Heat because they are a Michigan company, and this machine allows me to get a perfect heat treat every single time. It's super accurate, and wait, hold on. That oil just caught on fire, and I dropped it into the oil. That's not a good thing. I hope that guy can, like, fish that thing out and make sure that the oil doesn't all the way... Oh! I don't think that much fire is supposed to be happening. But anyways, Even Heat is a really great company, and every time I've dealt with them, they have been way above and beyond helpful. Oh, wow, that is really on fire now. That does not seem like... Oh, yeah, I probably should have been wearing brown pants at this point, because this thing is really catching on fire, and I'm a little bit worried at this point that if I kick this thing over, then the oil will spill all over the floor, and my shop will catch on fire, and it'll burn my shop down, and oh man, that that is a lot of fire, and that is not ideal. If you put a fire extinguisher to this, it might put it out, but you know, like, just shutting it is gonna work. Oh wait, my thing doesn't fit. It's out. I won't have that happen again on the second one. All right, well, the second knife definitely caught that on fire as well, and that fire looks like a little bit worse than the last. Okay, it's going down. That's good. That's good. Don't have to worry. The fire's gonna go out. I feel like this is a little bit more controlled than the last time around. All right, all of the oil is on fire. The entire top is on fire. Maybe I can blow it out. Okay, blow. No, we're not blowing it out. Okay, let's get this thing out. And the whole knife is on fire. The oil is caught fire and is staying on fire. So let's go ahead and shut this thing. Not going to have any issues if I just...
How in the world is this thing straight after that? Wild.
If any of you guys have safety advice on how not to burn your shop down, leave them in the comment down below, because obviously I need to learn. I was able to straighten out the jaw blade with the KH Daily solid carbide tipped hammer. Now, that carbide tipped hammer is really cool, and it helps you straighten out blades that you would otherwise lose to warps. Obviously, it worked because it's perfectly straight now, but I just wasn't thinking when I was doing it, and I didn't film it, so it's not in this video. So here I am putting in the final bevels, and this thing looks really nice, and both of them turned out super pretty. So let's go ahead and switch over to the final etch. This is really the only process I wish I would have been able to do over again in time for the Apocalypse Challenge video to come out. The 3 days definitely limited the amount of etch that I could get done. It also didn't help that I only had this small little tank to put my ferric chloride in. The whole blade doesn't fit in it, and it would have been nicer to not have to flip it over like this to get an etch on both sides. It just wasn't the best situation, and in the future I'll have to make myself a larger tank to be able to dip larger projects like this in. I don't really do a whole lot of these larger projects, so this isn't really something I run up against in my everyday knife making career. My normal etching process involves a much longer soak in the acid, as well as a 24-hour-long coffee etch to really get that nice contrast, which I just had no time because as I'm etching this, it is the last day I have for this build. I gotta say, even though it wasn't the longest etch I've ever done, the contrast, it looks somewhat okay for what I was able to do with the time that I had. And I'm not overly angry at it, but if you were to buy these, I feel like I would want to do a better etch. WD-40, you're the GOAT. I always get a couple of comments in the comment section talking about how dangerous this style of knife sharpening is. And I totally agree with you guys. The only problem that I have is that I get really great results incredibly quickly. So it's really kind of hard for me to change because this feels really right to me. To get rid of that last little wire burr, a quick few light swipes against a high grit buffing belt is all you really need. To give the jaw knife just a little bit more apocalypse flair, I pulled out a technique that I haven't done in a long time, and that's putting in serrations. The small wheel attachment with the belt grinder put up on its side is a really quick and easy way to put in serrations. You have to take this process really slow. Make sure you're going at a really slow belt speed, as well as paying attention to every serration as you put them in. It's even better if you actually mark them out and have a little Sharpie dot for every spot that you want to put the serration. But I didn't feel like doing it on this one because, if the serrations are a little bit jagged and a little bit different on each one, that just kind of adds the apocalypse theme, And also, I also just didn't want to map all that out. I was running low on time. I'm happy with how they turned out anyways. We made it to the end. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the rest of this video.